not always going to succeed, but there are resources out there to help you succeed. And at least to face those challenges without that loneliness that comes with sitting at the top for so many, that discourages so many and sends their whole life, not just themselves, into a tailspin when things unravel because all the bad things that come with that. So I'm really, really serving my purpose and just want to share with the audience that just finding something to do that fuels your sense of purpose and makes you happy.
Hello and welcome to the Eternal Optimist podcast. My name is Matt Drinkhahn, and I am your Eternal Optimist host today and your guide on this journey as we learn how to be resilient, we learn how to let hope take hold and turn that into a strategy with tangible actions. Friends, before I share with you the story today that is absolutely going to blow your mind, I want to advise and remind you to join me on Instagram and Facebook every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time live, where I mind my live stream. I share thoughts, tips, hopes, ideas of the Eternal Optimist lifestyle. And I love for you to give me that rating and review on the Apple, on the Spotify. Go to that wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a nice review. You are much appreciated. Now, today's episode, and I'm going to cut through to the punchline of this amazing story first. Get to it right away as I introduce my brother from another mother, Mr. Leo Popik. This story will blow your mind. Here's the punchline. In COVID, Leo lost his entire business, a family member, friends, his livelihood, everything, and he came back. This is a redemption story if I've ever heard one. Leo lives as an eternal optimist. He embodies who we are as good as anyone I've ever met. You might not sense that behind this smile and this positive energy is a man who had it all taken away, and then he came back. You might not sense that. When you get to know him, though, you'll know this is as genuine and authentic as it gets. And Mr. Leo, and he's amazing. Words cannot express how much I respect this man. He kept it together when many would have given up on life. Get ready to go down the rabbit hole with a shocking story of immigration, of success, failure, COVID, death, rebuilding, rebirth, and a shining light of a human being leading the way for us. I introduce you to Mr. Leo Popik. Enjoy. And now, our sponsor for today will be one of our reviewers. From Bailey FM, a great way to start your day, 5 stars. Such a great uplifting podcast. Matt is a great host and knows how to get to the heart of things. The Eternal Optimist is encouraging, inspiring, and it's truly a great way to start your day. A must listen. Well, thank you very much, Bailey FM, for that wonderful review. You are much appreciated, my friends. I'd like to invite everyone out there to pause and rate, review, and share this podcast. Who is one person you can share this with today who may enjoy a story of overcoming challenge, who may find it very intriguing? Who's that one person? Please pass along to someone today. Thank you so much, my friends.
Hello, and welcome to the Eternal Optimist podcast, the show for optimists by optimists. This is the show for people who see the good in the world and want to make a positive difference in the lives of their families and communities. Each week, you'll hear inspiring stories that will get you thinking bigger and playing more offense in life. With your host and high-performance coach, Matt Drinkhahn.
And with that introduction, I welcome to the show today a dear friend, Mr. Leo Popik. Leo, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Matt. Honored to be here, man.
Love it. I love the answer. What you didn't say was, I'm good. How are you? I'm good. I don't like that answer. I'm doing great. Honored to be here. That is the kind of energy I loved. And that's why I wanted you on the show. I remember the very day that I met you. We were at a Front Row Dads retreat, and we got together before the duck pin bowling or whatever that weird game was, where the balls were smaller and the pins were smaller, and we threw them as hard as we can. I remember that conversation well, and that's why I wanted to spend some time with you today, because your story is so rich and compelling. You're such a learner. You pour into people so well. I love your energy. We can just start off right now. This is I Love Leo Love Fest. There's just so many things about you that really connected with me, made me want to be around you more. And I know from what you shared then that you've overcome some challenges.
Yeah.
And you've had some stuff. And I would love to gift our audience with just the gift of getting to meet you and hearing about your stuff, hearing about your life, your business. And yeah, that's why.
Great reason.
Yeah.
I loved your energy from the get-go. And I was the new guy at that retreat. You were an incumbent. I was coming in for the first time. That was the first event of the entire weekend retreat or week-long retreat. And you came to me, this stranger, to welcome me into the community. I love those kinds of people. But you didn't just say, hey, how are you? You were like, sit down. What are your goals for this retreat? What are you trying to achieve here? How can I help you achieve them? And I'm like, am I getting a coaching session for free? And then I realized that that's just who you are. That's just you. That's just you as a dude. You never connected with me afterwards to see if you want to be a client or anything. It was just like, this is you. And then I've seen you several times since then at so many summits and online events and posting stuff and everything. And you're just that same dude. So, and everything you've ever shared has totally resonated with me. So we are soul and philosophical buddies at some deep level.
Oh yeah, man. I love it. You brought something up a second ago. You said that you were the new guy and I was the incumbent, and my brain raced when you said incumbent. It went to, man, I feel kind of presidential or senatorial right now as the incumbent. And if I were the incumbent and I were in government right now, then what I might look at is, what's the message that I'm putting out there as the leader? If I'm senator, congressman, president, I don't think this is a political conversation we're having. It's more of a leadership conversation in my mind. Is if I am a leader of some type of, be it my family, be it clients, be it front row dads, any group of people that are looking for some type of vision or leadership, then what is it that we are sharing with them? So I'd pose that question to you first, Leo, totally off script. What's the vision or the place that we as leaders might want to project out there to people?
Well, first of all, it's really hard to think of oneself as a leader before you think of. I think of myself more as a person. I don't define myself as a leader. It turns out that life has put me in a leadership role in a variety of different realms of life, right? With my business, with other businesses that I'm involved with that are not maybe my core focus, but that I have ownership in, with activities in society, church groups, front row dads, and other type of communities like that. Our sport, I ended up being my kid's basketball coach at the Y, and I never played basketball. So we end up in all these leadership roles. I joined an organization called BNI, and they made me VP of the chapter. And I wasn't campaigning for it. And these things just sort of happen to us as opposed to us going out there and looking for them. So leadership roles come our way. And I think the best way we can honor them is just really bring our A game, which starts with our core values and our level of positivity and wanting to impact others for good and not make it about ourselves and being self-serving. Tough to do. We need daily reminders of that. I certainly do, but that's what helps me in all of those leadership roles.
I'm with you. I like the way you frame that. Leaders, we may be thrust into that role intentionally or otherwise because of who we are, who we might be. And the two things I heard you say when you show up, if you're in a leadership role, or just the way that you show up, I'm going to bring my A game. I'm going to live my core values. And I love that you're set on those things. Like that's your default, is bring my A game and core values. And I love to just gift our audience with that to start, that we're talking to a leader, a person first, a leader who leads with, I'm going to bring my A game, and a leader who leads with, I'm going to live my core values. So I love that about you, Leo. Let's go back to maybe more of the script. Our guests are used to sharing challenges. So I know that we've talked a little bit about a challenge, and I'd love to give you the playground here. You can go all the way back to the beginning in the sandbox when you were a kid. You can go to right now, just a challenge that's happening right now. But anywhere in your lifespan, I'd love to just kind of talk about one of the challenges that you faced. So please, I'll let you take it from here and frame it for us.
I've gone through so many challenges, Matt. And what really inspires me about your show is that I'm an eternal optimist myself, but I find myself constantly looking at challenges day in and day out. And I surround myself with people who take on challenges. That's, to me, the way to live this life, is rather than shy away from them, to tackle them head on. Now, I didn't always have this positive outlook on every challenge that came my way. I mean, there have been a fair share of challenges that I just was like, why me? Why this circumstance? Why did this have to happen? And I guess let's just jump right in and like grab one, for example. Something really unique about my story is I'm actually an immigrant who's felt American his whole life. I grew up here, lived in St. Louis, Missouri when I was a kid. And then I came back here, did grad school in Boston. Now I live in Florida. I've been living here for 6.5 years, and I'm a permanent resident, and I'm going to become a U.S. citizen in about a year. But this reality of having been coming back and forth for a long time was kind of strange for me, and how it affected my life, because it was in this country that I started to really feel as a human being. I was 10 when I moved here, so I kind of grew up till the age of 16. And those were the first years that I remember vividly, where I formed my first real relationships with friends, girlfriends, and enjoyed life at its best. But then that was kind of taken away from me. My parents moved back to our country of origin, Argentina, and they said, we're going to settle down here, and that's that, And so I couldn't do high school, at the end of high school and college in the States. I couldn't build my life here. I knew that if I came here, I would kind of have to distance myself from them. And this was pre-internet, pre being able to speak on the phone for free. So I had a big struggle there with my identity, and all right, so I'm an American who's going to live his life in Argentina, was sort of what I went through in my late teens and my 20s. But fast forward 20 years, because then I kind of built my life in Argentina. I got married there, had my child there. Then I moved to Brazil, had 2 kids in Brazil. And I was always doing business with the United States. I was always flying over here, coming here. I was coming here for vacations. I was trying to live that life that way. But inside, I was still feeling that disconnect, that I would watch TV shows that were American every single day. I would listen to American music every single day. But I was living there in South America. And one of the most challenging things that I went through is that when I moved here 6.5 years ago to Florida with my wife and 3 kids, I thought that getting the green card was going to be a breeze. I mean, I have a master's degree from Harvard University. I have businesses in the United States that have been paying taxes, all these things, right? I grew up here, and it was a nightmare. I went through 3 years of not knowing if it was going to come or not, and if we're going to have to leave the country. And that was hard. I promise you there were moments where I was like, if this country doesn't give me a green card, that's it. I am never going to try to live here. I'm out. And it was like, why this circumstance? Why me? And I did at moments kind of lose it. I was down and out about the circumstance.
I love the seriousness of where we are, but I've got to go back to something not as serious just for a moment. When you are, just randomly that came to my mind, you're living between Argentina, you've been to Brazil, live here, Boston, Florida. What's the difference between, I'm just thinking about television shows in each of these different countries. Are they running the same shows in every country with the same types of actors? So, for example, they've got Friends here in the United States. Is there an Amigos in Brazil or in Argentina and something else? What's the difference between the shows? And do you prefer U.S. or Argentinian shows or what?
So I have always preferred U.S. shows, U.S. movies, U.S. music, but, by far, which doesn't mean I don't have a Argentinian movie that I like here and there or song or artist, but it's 95% US. And yes, you'll find a version of Friends in Argentina or in Brazil, not through the franchise, not through, with the rights that Warner Brothers or whatever might have, but a local type of, local creative will do something similar. But it didn't appeal to me. Culturally, I didn't fit in. I tried my best because I'm my parents are staying here. I don't want to be that far from my siblings, and I really tried to integrate to society, to the point that I even got involved in public service. I was in politics in my 20s in Argentina. I held public office. I did politics, started a political party, was a candidate, but ultimately something inside of me was in a big disconnect. And I felt like I was an intruder in this space. I was trying to overcompensate for the fact that I didn't have that much of a feeling of being from there. So my life was out of balance for sure.
Well, it feels challenging from where I sit because you were here from 10 to 16. Your family was here, and then you had to go, and then you came back, and then it took, and you're still in the process right now of getting the green card. And I think you just shared that.
No, I have the green card. I have the green card.
Oh, the green card, but getting citizenship is next. Yeah, right. But the green card, it took 3 years.
3 years.
To get that. And that was a very hard 3 years just from that perspective.
Yes.
What was hard or challenging about that? Because I don't have a frame. I don't understand that. So help us understand what happened.
Okay. So I came here with a business that I started. And the first thing that happens when you go into that process is that you have to first apply for a work visa. And so your work visa is for a year, and then you have to renew it. And so you can't start renewing until it's almost expired. So you're always wondering what happens if when I apply, it doesn't get renewed. And then simultaneously, you have to go in and do the green card. Legal fees are through the roof if you want trustworthy, reputable lawyers to do this stuff for you. I'm talking like I invested $70,000 in different legal, but that's like the least of the concerns that I had. I was told if you want to get your work visa renewed, you got to hire 7 Americans. I mean, this was the hire American, era of U.S. I'm talking 2017 to 2020. The Make America Great years, and so Make America Great Again years. So I was told you have to hire a lot of Americans right now in order to get your visa renewed. I hired people that cost my company hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in salary that I didn't need. And so that put strain in my company's finances and performance and ability to reinvest and grow. I ended up hiring in haste. So I brought in the wrong people. There was one guy who, when I had to let him go, I was concerned about his mental health. I thought he could get very violent. So I couldn't go into the office for like 6 months. And I was, really disconnected, not only from my team in 10 different countries, but now even from my team just down the block from where I'm living. I'm dealing with these things while we're seeing, shootings take place all over the place. So I'm like, this is new to me. I'm in a, new kind of environment for me. While this is all happening, my lawyer says you can't leave the country for months at a time because your process is ongoing. And my business was always counting on me to show up in different places because it was an international corporate event organizer. And so clients would want to see me at trade shows or at their big events. And so the disconnect was total. And to make matters worse, the C-suite of the company that I built over many, many years was counting on me to get my green card so that I would then start working on their green cards, or at least work visas, so they could come here. And because they saw that mine wasn't coming through, they knew that I wasn't going to start petitioning for theirs to come through, which essentially meant that their days in the company were numbered because I was going to eventually just, cease trying to bring them over and rather replace them. So they started having a little bit of a disconnection with the company.
Oh.
It was like everything is falling apart. And I did not see that happening at all when I made my plan to come. I thought it was just going to be like when you go on vacation, you bring your laptop and you keep working. Nothing changes, right?
It feels like, wow, when you started this story and you said $70,000 is that's like the minimum cost to continue throughout this process just to have reputable attorneys to help you draft this. And then you kept building, and then you have to hire 7 Americans. And then you are having trouble with the disconnected C-suite because they're not going to be able to get in. All the things that you're doing it sounds like it's a full-time business just to try to get in here. And I'm not trying to make it easy. I'm not trying to frame it as, hey, let's bring everyone in the whole world in here. It just sounds so hard to get here.
So hard. And to make matters worse, because I just told you the business aspect of it all. On the personal side, because we couldn't leave the country, when my wife lost the most important person outside of our core family, who was her grandma, that she spent an hour on the phone with every day for as long as I had known my wife. And she couldn't even be with her in the final months of her life. And she was calling and saying, can't you come? And we were making that very big decision that staying here was that important to us that we couldn't sacrifice anything. My wife's grieving after her grandma passed away was that much more difficult because she wasn't able to show up for her, not even attend her funeral. It ended up taking like a year after the death for my wife to at least go back to Argentina and see her siblings and cousins and be able to at least grieve with them the loss of that woman who had been the core of their entire family. So, it threw her into a depression. It wasn't just grieving at that point. And so while I was dealing with all of this work stuff and financial stuff, I'm dealing with my wife being in this situation and me needing to really step it up for her and having to not know how to step it up. Because if anything, I was being more pulled in different directions than ever before. So this was probably the most challenging period of my life.
Well, thank you for sharing this story. So help me understand, is this 2017 to 2020? Is this during COVID? Where is this exactly on the frame of things?
Yeah, so 2017 is when we came, and through 2019, we actually got the green card on the last day of the decade. It came into our house on December 31st, 2019. And, my wife's grandma passed away on May 29th of that year. So it was all of that year was really when this was at its height. But it carried into 2020, and what really brought the challenge to another level, a whole new level, is that right after we get the green card, our celebration is short-lived because COVID comes in our business, which I'd been dedicating myself full-time to for 17 years and had gone from scratch, from zero, to selling over $1 million a month, went to nothing. And so now came in a whole new array of challenges, letting go of people that had taken us blood, sweat, and tears to find, to bring into the team, to integrate as a team, letting go of our offices, telling clients that we were hoping to survive this. But and then I start my own process of soul searching. What am I going to do with my life? Do I really want to wait 4 or 5 years till the world is ready to do big international corporate events? If all goes according to plan and the vaccine is effective and everybody takes it and so on, is that something that I want to do? And so we're dealing with all of these economic and financial challenges as at the same time as I'm having to do the soul searching as my family's provider, because my wife had kind of put her career on the back burner to focus on helping me grow our business.
Take me to March 2020, please. March, April 2020, when everything goes lockdown and you're running $1 million a month. You've got the green card. You're here. You're ready. You're ready to take off.
I am ready. I'm ready at that point. Like, we are working with the accountant to create that tax return for 2019 to go to the banks and finally say, hey, I'm a green card holder, so give us a line of credit, because we had never had access to any sort of financing of any kind. And so it was like, beautiful moment. It's finally going to happen. My wife, I was like, thank you for your patience of the last 3 years. Now we're going to see it all come into fruition. And a week later, we hear about this thing happening in Asia and in Europe. And we're like, oh, great. Clients now want to come to Latin America. I mean, that's how naive we were about what was going on. Like, why are the clients all saying, we got to cancel our event in Asia? We're going to bring it to Latin America, which was great for us because we only operated in Latin America. We had people in 10 different Latin American countries. 100% of our operation was there. And it lasted for about a week, because a week later they were saying, oh, no, actually, we're not going to bring it to Latin America. This is not going to happen. And I went from that feeling like now we can finally take the company from 8-digit to 9-digit revenue to that feeling of I need to sell this before it's worth nothing. I got on a plane on March 10th, went to New York to see the 2 clients that I thought might be able to buy it really quickly, because they had been talking with us about acquiring us for years, and we had been saying we're not ready to be acquired. And I told them, if you want it, make an offer right now. And they're like, what? We are dealing with the same thing you are. We don't know if this is going to be an industry for years. So thanks, but no thanks. Took the plane back. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just in New York, in a plane without mask because the very next day that I was there, we were told you have to wear a mask, you have to do this, that, or the other. That's what was happening. I went back to my office here in Florida. We live close to Fort Lauderdale. I went to the office. All of a sudden, I felt like the world was falling on me, that everything was crumbling all around me. Everything I knew, everything I had worked toward for 17 years was just coming apart at the seams. My wife, when she heard me on the phone being so distraught, was like, come home. And when I came home, she said, you're not going back to that office. You could still go to the office. This was a week before lockdowns began. She's like, you're not going back. You need to stay here next to me. And that's when I started to kind of see things from the perspective of, at least I've got my family. At least we have our health. And that was the start. You go back to basics and you value the most important things. It gives you a sense of what is core to you. That's when all that busyness of business disappears and you are able to envision your life, even though I was only 46, as if you are a 90-year-old looking back at his life.
Wow. We didn't go this deep into the story when we met, and I just love you and appreciate you for sharing this, because this is, I cannot even begin to imagine. Wow, just wow. And as the true eternal optimist, when things are falling apart in the business, you realize, got my family and I've got my health. And that baseline foundation mentality of I've got that. So we're at that moment right now. You've got them. The business is in the process of or has crumbled. And you're great at your business, and through no fault of your own, what you are the very best at, which has been providing food on the table for a long time, now is gone. What happens next in March, April, May? How do we regroup and keep moving forward, Leo?
Well, first of all, this was all gut-wrenching. As an eternal optimist, even looking at my family and our health and valuing that, this was still gut-wrenching. I mean, I still had clients saying, send me the money back from the deposits we sent you for the event. I had vendors disappearing into, like not answering phones, not answering emails. They couldn't go to their offices. All of this happened over the course of a week or two.
Oh, man.
And just being that middleman of just not knowing what to do, what was right. This, obviously, we have contracts and they have force majeure clauses that says that if something completely out of nowhere happens, nobody is responsible. So the corporate lawyers that I consulted with said you have no responsibility. You're upholding your contracts. You're totally covered by force majeure. But I still felt an obligation, because these were clients that had, looked me in the eye several times and said, I'll trust you with my business. And these were vendors that this was a team that I had a personal relationship with. To me, that mattered. I couldn't just imagine myself folding the business and saying, all right, whatever. And so I had to deal with coming up with a new plan for how I was going to provide for my family and have an impact in the world and do work that made me want to wake up in the morning, while at the same time feeling like I couldn't just close the chapter and walk away and say, all right, I'll declare bankruptcy. And so that was a challenging moment for me, because when you reinvent yourself from a clean slate, it's much easier than when you have something that you feel you're not ready to let go of. And at the same time, I'm asking myself, am I not being able to let go of this because I don't want to admit failure? Is this my ego getting in the way? What are the reasons? So a lot of questioning of that. But eventually, Matt, what happens is the reality sets in that I have to think about the future. I have to start building the future. And my wife is a life coach. She had just started working at that time. And she was at that time more focused on personal. Now she's working more with female executives in corporations. And she starts seeing me as, a great person to start helping through. And she starts asking me great questions about my passion, my purpose, my why. I start, getting into that world of Start With Why, and Simon Sinek and all of the works around purpose. And I started asking myself, what is my purpose? So I had this opportunity to come up with what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, or at least in the biggest chapter of my life that was going to start now that I did have a green card, now that I could firmly say we're here to stay. And so do I want to be an employee? I know I haven't been. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, but do I want to be an employee somewhere? Do I want to go into government? Do I want to go into the United Nations? Do I want to be in a nonprofit? I could start as if I was a kid again. And through that process, which had to be accelerated, it's not like the process that I did while I was in college, where I had all the time in the world while I studied to figure it out. This had to be really, really quick. I started narrowing it down until I finally said, yes, I definitely want to start a business. I definitely want to work with people and bringing them together like I've done through the events that we've organized. But I want to create the content around those interactions and those events. Whereas in the past, my business was about bringing together the vendors and doing the logistics. I wanted to come up with the architecture of how the community was going to engage. And eventually I realized I want to work with serving CEOs and entrepreneurs because that's who I know best how to serve. Yep. And so I might not have the authority now to do it, but I need to build that authority based on what I've done in the past and based on the idea that I have, the value proposition that I have for the company I want to start.
Okay, so let's take it back for a second here. We've gone through and it's not easy now. We've gone through a lot of hard stuff right there to get to a place where you are now searching to find your passion, your core, your why. You're studying, you're reading, you are enlisting the help of your wife. Kudos to you. My wife always says if she tries to coach me or I coach her, that's a street that we don't walk down that street very easily.
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
She sounds like an amazing woman. I'm looking forward to meeting her one of these days.
She is awesome. An amazing woman. But still, it wasn't easy. There was a lot of pressure.
Yes. So you've come up with an architecture to coach, lead, connect with people that you know the life of a CEO, the thinking of those types of leaders. So bring us forward to your vision now and where we are now in your world and what you're impacting, Leo.
So today, and for the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, I've been building, and I am building a community called Leading Peers for people who are leading companies. These are CEOs and entrepreneurs, and that want to learn and grow with other peers, other leaders of companies. And so we're building a community for entrepreneurs that want to evolve, that want to achieve better results in business and in life. And it's a place where ideas are exchanged, information is exchanged, but at the core, it's about creating connection and collaboration amongst people who are like-minded in that we share certain core values, trust, accountability, a growth mindset, meaningful relationships, and servant leadership. Today, we are 55 CEOs and owners in the community. That number has grown quite a bit. Just this year, we started it with 48, and we acquired 7 new members this year. Last year, we went from 10 to 48. So we're hitting a nice rhythm now where I'm hoping that by the time this episode comes out, let's say around March, April, we will be close to reaching 100 members because we're acquiring about 10, 15 members a month.
Yeah, I'm on the website right now, and it looks like leadingpeers.com. I Googled it. I'm on there, and I love what I'm seeing. The first thing I always do when I go to a website is I look at the About section. I want to hear about these values. I want to see who the leaders are, and you've done a nice job of that. So I like what I'm seeing so far. Tell us a little bit more. If someone were to get involved or have interest, then what's the process look like, and what comes with being a member of Leading Peers, Leo?
So being a member of Leading Peers is a lot like for you and me being a member of Front Row Dads. Whereas in Front Row Dads, what we put front and center is family. and relationships. Because at the core, in Front Row Dads, we are family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. At the core of leading peers is your leadership journey in and of itself. And so it is a space where you can come in and actually prioritize the challenges you're having as a leader. What's happening in your business or in your businesses. A lot of our members are involved with several businesses, or they are investors in several while they're growing one of them. And they get to come and share in a very safe setting what's going on, where they need help, and everybody around them comes in to try to help them achieve what they're trying to. And it's about overcoming challenges. So we create that safe space for people to be vulnerable that are not used to being vulnerable. Because, in Front Row Dads, we have a lot of people who are in the personal development space or who come from companies like Cutco, where they did a lot of training on how to achieve more by changing your mindset. At the core, there's a lot of that. But in leading peers, our members are typically people who've never been in a community like ours. And all of a sudden, they're sharing their financial results like, oh, this was my revenue last month. This was our company's profit last month. And this is how it's different from the 12-month average. And they're sharing that for the first time because maybe they don't share it with their employees. Maybe they don't go back home and share it. And so it's like, wow, these people actually are asking me questions. Like I have a board of advisors now. So everything revolves around these pods in Leading Peers, which we call peer board or peer advisory board. And when you join Leading Peers, you join a specific peer advisory board. If you're not in one, you're not in Leading Peers, because when you apply to a specific board and you're accepted into Leading Peers in that specific peer board. And so these are groups of 8 people plus somebody that we assign as a peer board leader. That's a person in our faculty and our staff. So it's not a member of the organization that runs the group. It doesn't rotate or anything. No, we certify these individuals through a certification process. Typically, they are consummate entrepreneurs, people who've been in the business world their whole life, who are now retired from the trials of day in and day out running businesses and want to give back, and they want to continue to learn and be positively impacted while helping other people and pass along the torch of entrepreneurship to the next generation. So they're in their 50s and 60s.
If I may jump in, I feel like I kind of want to be a member. I love what you're sharing, and I'm not trying to tee you up for a sales pitch. We did not talk about this in advance, but I love what I'm hearing, and I love you. So I want to ask a couple more questions about it. The question that comes to mind might be, when you're describing this, I know you, and I think you're phenomenal. And I'm hearing something that might be in a very similar, not the same, but a similar framework to like an EO organization, or maybe like not Vistage, but something like that, where leaders get together. What might be the advantage or difference with Leading Peers compared to those other groups I may have mentioned?
That's a great question. So I'll cut to the story. When I hit the pandemic, I was a member of Vistage. And I realized, wow, this is now expensive for me. It was very inexpensive when the company was selling, over $1 million a month. Now it's very expensive. So I had to exit Vistage, and I looked at EO and YPO, and they required an annual commitment in advance. And I didn't feel like I wanted to do that. I was like, well, maybe I'll end up going back to Vistage, or maybe I won't like EO. I was too old for YPO. You have to be 44 or younger. I was 46, which seems ridiculous, but that's fine.
I know.
But that's their prerogative.
Because we are young.
Right.
Okay.
But that's their prerogative. But to me, it was like, all right, so that one's out. Vistage is out. So the only one I could really look at was EO. And EO needed more than 10 grand for me to even walk in and see who I would be in a forum with. And so I thought, there's got to be a better way. I looked for it. I couldn't find it. So the biggest difference is our accessibility. If somebody wants to join Leading Peers, they can visit a peer board meeting for the first hour. During that first hour, we do certain things that don't involve total vulnerability. They're more about discussing a business topic and exchanging best practices and information. The visitor gets to see what that peer board looks like, who are the members, and they can decide if they want to join Leading Peers and if they want to join that specific board. And a visitor can visit 3 different peer boards. So they actually get to choose. And once they send their application to the specific board that they want, the board gets to choose if they get in or not. So it's a very different process. And once the board chooses them, they then have to pay $280. That's it. They pay their first month's fees. So they don't have to put in over 10 grand for the first year, and the enrollment fees that EO charges. They just pay the monthly fee that they're going to have to pay every single month. It's a very different proposition, which makes people who are not ready to take that huge leap of faith of forking up today it's like $11,500 to join EO for the first year, to be able to do that in the case of Leading Peers, because it's like, all right, worst case scenario, I pay $280, I don't like it, I'm out. But you have the opportunity to see for yourself before you even apply who you're going to be in the board with. And not only do you pick them, they pick you back. So there's more likely to be trust and accountability and meaningful relationships happening as a consequence. That at the root, at the core, is a massive difference.
Massive difference. And from where I sit, that's very appealing, the entire process, because I've been through the process with the other 2 groups mentioned, and I like those other groups, and ultimately chose not to join. And this sounds very accessible. Of course, they have to accept me too, but I like everything I'm hearing. And if I wanted to take part in this or kind of dive in, and real live time right now, I think I want to. How might I take the next step to begin the process, Leo?
So my contact information, I'm happy to share it, at some point. LP, my initials at leadingpeers.com is my email. So LP are the initials for Leo Popik, also for Leading Peers. So LP at leadingpeers.com. You can email me. You can go to our website. There's a contact form right there in the website where you can just fill it out if you go to contact, and then we'll get back in touch with you. Just express that you want to talk with somebody in our team. And then there is an application form online, but the application form is going to ask you which peer board do you want to join. That's the first question. And if you don't know the answer to that, then that's when you know that you need to have a conversation with us first to say, what are my options? We're putting together new peer advisory boards as we speak. There's also virtual and in-person boards. We want to eventually have both options available throughout the world. Right now, unless you live in South Florida, it's best to be in a virtual peer advisory board, meeting online on Zoom. Okay. But you can still partake in the events that we do, which are in person, which happen throughout the year.
Just to let listeners know, I'm deadly serious about it. I just went and submitted my interest right now on the spot, and it took like 10 seconds. Yeah. Thanks to autofill on my computer. But it was real simple, and thank you. Is there anything else that you like to share about Leading Peers, Leo? Anything else come to mind before we move to the last section of our discussion today?
Just that I'm very passionate about it. I'm very committed about it. I don't know if this is going to be what I do for the rest of my life, but ever since I took this position, this job, after that soul searching that I told you about, Matt, I feel like, if my life ended, God forbid, or I got sick and couldn't work anymore, and this was the snapshot, this was the last picture that my kids would have, my wife would have, of what Leo was dedicated to, and my parents would have, and everybody that's ever known me, would it make me proud that I was working toward this? And the answer is yes. It would make me happy. I don't know if the word is proud, that I was trying to help entrepreneurs and business owners thrive, because I feel that they have so much to contribute. I feel that, they take on risks. They put new ideas and visions out there to solve the world's problems. And if they succeed, their teams do well. You'll see our mission is to help CEOs succeed so their people and businesses prosper. It's about how do we create that change. And a free society, depends on you having a choice of who to buy from and where to work. And all of that at the root comes down to having a system where it works out for the entrepreneur. That it's, you're not always going to succeed, but there are resources out there to help you succeed, and at least to face those challenges without that loneliness that comes with sitting at the top for so many, that discourages so many and sends their whole life, not just themselves, into a tailspin when things unravel because, I don't know, the business loses money or whatever, and then, all the bad things that come with that. So I'm really, really serving my purpose, and just want to share with the audience that just finding something to do that fuels your sense of purpose and makes you happy is probably the one thing I'm most thankful to have right now as a consequence of what all the challenges that I went through, 3-4 years ago.
Awesome. Thank you, Leo. And as I mentioned before, this is not a scripted conversation. I will say that just knowing you coming in, I did not know to the depth of what you do and how you do it. And I'm incredibly excited about it. I already submitted my application in there, and I invite anyone out there to take a look at this, because Leading Peers sounds awesome. And it sounds awesome to me simply because Leo is fantastic, and I just connect with his energy. He truly is an eternal optimist. And Leo, if I may take you to ding, 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 the lightning round, and ask you a couple of questions.
But before that, if I can say something, Matt, just real quick.
Yes,
I always tell everybody who decides to apply, I'm honored that you're taking the leap of faith to join our community. But in your case, I'm especially honored because you are this amazing individual who is so warm, so passionate, so energetic, so committed to your vision, and you're so unique. And, I've known you for a couple of years now, or a year and a half or whatever, but you're just amazing. You're the type of person that I look up to, that I want to have as my friend. So I'm especially honored that Matt Drinkhahn is potentially going to be a member of Leading Peers. So thank you for taking the leap of faith.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. And thank you again. And genuinely, everything you said, I mirror back to you. And at the beginning, I said this might be a Leo love fest. And it truly is that, because you talk being genuine, authentic, and being real and want to serve people. I mean, you've been that. And you were that when we didn't have an agenda with each other when we first met. It was just, let's get to know each other. You've always been that way. And for our listeners, I would share this. If you just kind of go back to the guts of the story here, here's a man who had built something on the back of blood, sweat, and tears himself and a number of other people, and due to circumstances that he could not control, with the green card for one, that was in itself was a quagmire of challenge that he navigated. And then when we finally get through to the other side of that, with a lot of challenges that came with that, we then get to something even more out of our control, which was COVID, which impacted probably everyone listening to this. Here is yet another person that real live in the flesh that had a major challenge, major meaning an 8-figure annual business shut down in overnight, literally overnight. Imagine that. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners can really, really relate to that. And just thank you for having the courage to keep going and still be you, and love you for that, brother. So awesome. And here's what's next. We have a true eternal optimist in our midst today, team. So we're going to challenge him. We're going to push him a little bit and see what he says here. Leo, I got 3 questions for you. Number 1, what does eternal optimism mean to you, sir?
It means that, to me, that you believe that things happen for a reason, that life is not completely, and I'm sorry to get philosophical, but that life is not completely pointless, that it's not completely random, that there is a purpose that we are meant to serve in the world. Some call it God, some call it the universe, some call it some other force. But to me, it's believing in that, because that means that whatever challenge is thrown your way is something that is meant to happen, and that you can tackle with that humility and curiosity of understanding why it was meant to happen. And as you work through it, as you learn from it, you have faith that you come out on the other side feeling, being a better person. And that is the hope that fuels the eternal optimist.
Awesome. Thank you. Leo, I'm going to ask you to think only of English songs or TV shows at this moment, because most of our listeners are mostly English speaking. I am curious if there's a show or a song or both that inspire you, give you a little bit of energy. What might your show or your song be?
Well, my fight song's always been Eye of the Tiger since I saw Rocky 3. No question about it. I was falling asleep on my first date with my wife, and they had nothing to do with her.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's a different story. But
wait a second. You did great the whole show. You talked great about your wife. Hold on, Mrs. Popik.
She was my wife is incredible, and I knew it from the moment I saw her. I mean, even through that blind date, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this woman even exists. But I hadn't slept for like 48 hours before the date. I tried to tell her before, like, I'm really not feeling well. And she's like, I have blocked my Saturday night. It's now or never. So I showed up and I'm coming apart, just dead tired. And I actually played Eye of the Tiger as I was driving her back to the house. And it gave me that push of energy to be able to end on a high. And I don't think if it wasn't for that song, I don't think that I'd have the 3 kids that I have with her and we'd be together 18 years later. So thank you to Eye of the Tiger.
Nice.
A TV show that's really significant for me, one that wasn't too famous in the United States, but it's an American show. It's called Parenthood. Parenthood is a series my wife and I were watching as we were starting to become parents about 15 years ago. And it became the model of the family we wanted to build. They have all sorts of challenges, the 4 kids, and the parents themselves of these 4 kids and the grandparents who are in them, also grandparents of their 4 kids' children, have a lot of issues to work through. But they've managed to keep the family united. They've managed to keep it together despite all those challenges, despite that he was a war veteran, and got disconnected from his wife and had to go through some deep stuff. And so for us, that is what we want to build in this life. That's the family. That's the goal. Whatever we do to support that, that's got to be it. And if we achieve that with our family, everything else for us will fall into place.
Awesome, man. That's some gold right there. The Eye of the Tiger. Thank you, Eye of the Tiger. Yeah, Parenthood. My wife loves that show. We watched a couple of those together. She really dug it. I appreciate that. Last question would be a movie. If there's a movie or a couple movies that might inspire you, give you some energy, what might be a movie that inspires you? Movie or two?
Yeah. So the first movie that really rocked my world, and you've never heard this response on a show in history, is Gandhi. I was 9 years old. I went to see Gandhi at a movie theater. I had no idea who this Indian dude was. This was so foreign to me, like looking at India in the 1940s and this guy going on a hunger strike and everything. But it just really blew up my mind entirely. It's like there's a whole other world out there, like a different way to live, a different way to think. And just this idea that they conquered independence without firing a single shot was really transformative to me, because I was trying to find my source of strength and of power, my definition of where true power comes from as a young boy, as a 9-year-old boy. And I realized it lies within. And so this dude, Gandhi, became my role model, and eventually everyone else who followed, Nelson Mandela, all these people that stood for freedom and human dignity, but without firing a shot, to achieve that equality, to achieve that inclusion. So that would be one movie. A more recent one, I'm gonna have to think about it.
Awesome, Leo. This has been amazing, fantastic. Any word? It's been really, really awesome, and I appreciate you for being here and sharing your story today. And to conclude, this is hard because I don't want to say goodbye, because this has been so positive, energetic, and moving for me. We do need to conclude, however, and I'll give you the last word today. So if you can wrap us up here and share just what's on your heart, any message you want to share with the world, with our listeners about eternal optimism or anything, just last word to you, my friend.
Well, this month, every month we put a quote out there for leading peers. And this month we put a Winston Churchill quote, which is that success is being able to go from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And I feel that is the very definition of success. We're all going to have setbacks. I've told one period of my life that was challenging. I could have picked so many. I mean, right now I'm going through challenges right now that obviously we didn't have time to go into. But for the most part, my family is great. We're healthy. And, spiritually, we've grown a lot in the last couple of years, joined some amazing groups of people and communities like Front Row Dads. And I'm just loving what we're building day in and day out at work. So for the most part, just blessed and happy, even though all these challenges, are happening even as we speak. So that's it. Like, I want to keep it real. It's not picture perfect. I still have a disagreement with my wife, although I love her to death and she's the love of my life. I still have a day or two where I'm like, what's going on with this daughter? And then I have to overcome it. And I still have my Front Row Dads band that's helping me work through those challenges. And I have good friends that are helping me and so on. But I think the main thing is we need each other. And for people who are going through challenging times, like, don't isolate yourself. That's never the solution. The solution is love. The solution is openness, and go out and get the help that you need. It's there. And there's a lot of people that are just dying to help if you just are vulnerable and admit to them that you need them and you care about them.